Good evening. I'm City Council President Nick J. Mosby, and we are here today to hear directly from Department of Transportation as well as citizens from all across Baltimore to talk about complete streets. I know that there's been a lot of discussion, particularly as it relates to community concern specific to bike lanes. Obviously, complete streets entails much more than bike lanes, but I think a lot of the concern from the community has come specific to bike lanes. I want to say that because I think it's really important that when we talk about bike lanes and we talk about the impact of bike lanes to communities, obviously anything that the city does, city services, or any change or reconfiguration like a road, obviously the community should partake in the process and have a seat at the table. So Department of Transportation is here today to kind of go over where we are from a complete streets perspective, any goals that were set prior, kind of where we are in those plans, and then more importantly, kind of talk about any projects moving forward, just to start the dialogue in a very public forum. Going back to the original point that complete streets is much more than bike lanes, it's important when we talk about road safety. Complete streets is important when we talk about ADA compliance, understanding and knowing that the city is far behind many of those capital projects associated with our disabled residents. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. The way that we're going to run today, we're going to allow DOT to provide the presentation to us. We have an amazing director here. She's going to go, and her team is going to go through the presentation on complete streets to kind of go over some of the things that my office reached out to the mayor's office to ensure that you would be able to present today. From there, we're going to go into questions from the council. From there, we're going to allow Mr. President Lawrence Bell, former president of these esteemed chambers, the opportunity to come up and speak on his behalf, and then we're going to go directly into the list. If you have not signed up, we ask that you please sign up in the back with your name, address, organization information, and please ensure that you check testify if you would like to speak today. We're going to also turn it over to folks online and allow them the opportunity to kind of participate in today's discussion. I'm going to say from my office's perspective, we received a tremendous amount of email communication, folks that provided written testimony or just if it wasn't even formalized testimony, just wanted to kind of partake in today's discussion and allow their voices to be heard. So with that, without further ado, Madam Director, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
I am so sorry.
No worries.
Before you announce your team, I would like to say that in council chambers, we have Councilman Ryan Dorsey. Thank you, Mr. President. We also have Councilwoman Odette Ramos. Thank you, Mr. President. To my right, we have Chairman Stokes, as well as Councilwoman Felicia Porter. And from the Council President's office, we have Nathan Poole, as well as Tiffany Macklin. And then from Council Services, we have Mr. Larry Green. And we also have a representative from Councilwoman Odette Ramos's office. So with that, Madam Director, the floor is yours. If you could begin by announcing your team. We also have Nina Thimelis from the Mayor's office. Thank you, Madam Director.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. So with, as he said, I am Corren Johnson, the Director for the Baltimore City Department of Transportation. With me today, I have Liam Davis, Legislative Affairs Manager, Stu Sirota, Interim Director for DOT Planning, Will Haynes, Traffic Chief, and Valerie LaCour, who is our ADA Compliance Officer. So without any further ado, I will get the presentation started. So from a background sense, of course, nationally, complete streets became big in 2004, and that was really looking at that shift of moving from just trying to get cars through as fast as possible to really designing roads and providing amenities that provide that safe multimodal options for everyone. And then in 2018, we adopted our ordinance, and then 21, then the manual was finalized. So there is seems to be a little bit of confusion about complete streets, so I really want to start out with that introduction and helping people understand and get a little visual of what that means. So in essence, instead of just focusing on cars, it integrates everyone. It's about people. So it integrates people and it puts the safety over speed. It balances the needs of all different transportation modes. It supports our local land uses, our economies, cultures, and natural environments. And that's the definition provided by Smart Growth America. And so this transformative strategy really gets into the planning, designing, building, operating, and maintenance of our transportation system and making it for all ages and abilities. Here is just a side-by-side comparison of a road. So of course, this is MLK on the left. The picture on the right is in another country, and so, but they're similar roadways as far as the width. So we know the dynamics of MLK. But one here in the city is designed to basically accommodate the in and out, the commuter traffic. And so there's a lot of focus on the cars coming in and adds to that increased population in the region, not specifically the city. But then on the flip side, the other image shows you there's better walkability, transit connections, bike connections. There is increased density in the area, so residential opportunities and business opportunities and greater activity. So unfortunately, even though driving went down in 2020, the deaths of people walking increased by 4.7%. And so we can see here that there is a very staggering rise in the number of people throughout the nation that are losing their lives as pedestrians. Furthermore, when we talk about speed, speed is very critical in the serious injuries and whether or not someone lives or dies when they are hit by a car. And so if someone is driving 20 miles per hour, you have a very good chance of surviving that crash. However, if the car is going 30 miles per hour, it's about a 50% chance, right there at 45. But if they're going 40 miles per hour, the likelihood of you surviving is very slim. And so the GHSA projects that at least 7,508 pedestrians will be killed in crashes in 2022. And so this trend continues, and so our goal with Complete Streets is to try to reduce the speeds and to save lives. So let's talk about why it matters. Again, we talk about safety. So we have here an image for Mr. Wayne Richardson, who was killed in July 2019. He was struck and killed by a hit-and-run driver on East Madison Street while riding home from his cousin's repast. He left behind a disabled son from whom Wayne was the primary caretaker. And then we have an image from Mr. Edgar Draper, who was also killed in November 2021. Now, in this location, we actually have worked and made improvements from a Complete Street standpoint, but those protected amenities were not there to help with reduce the speeds and save their lives. It also matters because of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA aims to open doors to full participation by providing opportunities for people with disabilities. Essentially, it provides social equity. Transportation fundamentally serves accessibility and mobility. It removes barriers. It allows people with disabilities to travel no matter their ability. And in fact, many persons with disabilities are not able to drive, and instead they rely on transit. They rely on the pedestrian corridors for mobility. And so Complete Streets has ADA woven throughout it. And for example, here throughout Baltimore City, we have permits where we provide micromobility options, and we require that the permit vendor provides adaptive vehicles. So this is just an example of an adaptive vehicle that can be attached to a wheelchair to allow those in a wheelchair to have that independence and mobility despite not having a car. Hitting on ADA a little bit more, the transition plan is currently under development. We had a public meeting on October 18th, and the 30-day comment period is open. And in fact, key themes, again, from the public, this is not what we relayed, but this is what we heard from that meeting, is that people need access to those destinations, to employment, medical, financial, grocery, and recreation, that there is a strong emphasis on neighborhood connectivity and transit access, that they are seeking improvements in pedestrian signals, especially at very complex intersections, to ensure their safety. They want us to understand where disabled residents live, and they have concerns about obstructions on sidewalks that impact travel for people with many disabilities. And so moving forward, updated city standards and details will be available for public comment in November, and we have another public meeting scheduled for April 24. It matters because of equity and costs. Car ownership in Baltimore is very frequently seen as a necessity. Going with the stats from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, Baltimore area households in 21 to 22 spend 17.6% of its budget on transportation, which over 95% is to the buying and maintaining of that private vehicle. 13% is going towards food, and 31.7% is going towards housing. Unfortunately, some people that have lower incomes are having to choose between transportation and food or other necessities. Now, the next stat is really critical. 27% of Baltimore City residents do not have access to a personal vehicle, and in some areas that's almost 60%, as high as 59%, whereas the national average is 8.6%. So it shows there is a critical need for our residents to have alternative transportation access. So looking at all of the safety concerns and the transportation access needs, this depicts the modal hierarchy. And so what we're looking at is trying to ensure that those people that are most vulnerable on our roads and our sidewalks are protected in a crash. Myself, recently, I was in a crash. Someone hit me about 35 miles per hour. I walked away without any injuries. But had I been hit, someone going 35 miles per hour, I may not have been here today. And so this hierarchy talks about walking being number 1, cycling, public transit, and micromobility 2, taxi, commercial transit, shared vehicles 3rd, and then the individual single occupant vehicles is 4th. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not important, but it's saying that when we're designing the roadways, we're considering the safety mechanisms we put into place to protect those people who are walking, and so on and so forth. These are our fundamental guiding principles woven into the Complete Streets Manual, that we address safety first, that is accessible for everyone, that we improve mobility, we ensure equity, we reflect Baltimore's unique communities. And some of that you see here are where when we're making certain design changes, we're getting the input and letting some artwork and things live out through the designs. And lastly, that it be sustainable. So here I would just like to show a quick video of where we have some recognizing, say, bike infrastructure in place, but it's not just for bicyclists. There are many different people using this facility. So we have the motorized wheelchairs, the scooters, bicyclists, of course, but there's a whole varying degree of people using this facility. And additionally, the green paint that is there brings additional awareness to motorists that are traveling through there, so that they can look out for anyone in that crosswalk area and yield. So let's get into the overall benefits of Complete Streets, and there's a lot of them. When we talk about the safety, of course, obviously it reduces crashes, it reduces deaths, it directly helps save lives. There are reduced collision and injury costs from all of the damage and the insurance and other things that go into that you've got to deal with when you have a crash. Overall, there's lower emissions if we're able to get more cars off the roadway. There's improved health, both physical health, the air quality is associated with that. Increased employment opportunities. A lot of times transportation is a limiter to the jobs that people can go for. And so if they have better access to transportation, reliable access, then they can explore and look at other opportunities. It creates shared experiences when you're walking, biking, or using transit. There can be increased business investment and economic revenue. As we see throughout the country, areas where Complete Streets is put into place, areas where there is improved pedestrian access and bike access, that usually results in people stopping and going into businesses, spending money, and those businesses, especially those small businesses, can see that advantage. In fact, in San Francisco, local businesses saw sales increase as much as 60% after a bike lane was completed. Homes in the Chicago area within a half mile of a metro station sold for $36,000 more than other homes that didn't have that access. From the American Heart Association standpoint, the health benefits are staggering because a lot of our kids and teens are obese or overweight. With the unhealthy weight, it leads to higher risk prediabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and other health issues. But having those dedicated spaces for bicycling and walking helps kids and adults be active and gain independence. Overall, it helps with the quality of life, of course, lower costs for transportation, and I touched on the increased property values. So this is just an image from the Federal Highway Administration, and so they are working towards 0 serious injuries and 0 deaths on our roadways. In 21, Congress directed Federal Highway to focus on complete streets and start initiatives to improve safety. And with this shift, Federal Highway has numerous funding opportunities focused on addressing safety, equity, and accessibility for all road users. And many of these, Baltimore City DOT has won both independently or in partnership with MDOT MTA, such as the Highway Safety Improvement Program, Transportation Alternatives, RAISE, Safe Streets for All, and Reconnecting Communities grants. We're talking about competitive grant programs in the billions of accessible money for our great city. Here's an example of a before and after along Harford Road. This was from Echodale to White Avenue and installed in 2019. It has one lane in each direction with center turn lanes, shorter pedestrian crossings, bike lanes, and painted bump outs. Since this implementation, we have seen a 40% reduction in the average annual crashes, and also a 24% reduction in average annual injury related to crashes. Again, safety. Here's another example for Sinclair Lane at Moravia. This was an intersection safety improvements project. It reduced lanes from 3 to 2. We installed flex posts, painted bump outs, and to create a shorter crossing, and furthermore slow down turning vehicles. Then there are additional pavement marking guidelines throughout the intersection, and here we've seen a 52% reduction in average annual crashes post-installation. Here's an example of a proposed project. It's the 25th Street Streetscape. This is showing one lane in each direction with a turn lane or grass median. Again, it's still in the works. Shortened pedestrian crossing distances again, bump outs with parking pockets, upgraded ADA facilities, and then a wide shared use path on the north side. So in this slide is an exhibit of our 2015 Bike Master Plan. This was developed, well, said in 2015, but it was followed by an addendum in 2017. And in this addendum, it was to prioritize and focus on high priority projects. So the next one shows the amended version. This plan includes a network of protected bike lanes, preliminary acting as traffic calming. It improves access between neighborhoods and destinations, such as schools, shopping, parks, and community centers, and it increases safety for all road users. As the bike lane network grows, more people have the option to use bicycles, scooters, or also those that are in wheelchairs can use those facilities. The use of these bikes and scooters usage involves lower cost as compared to driving, and can help reduce the reliance on cars. It also can lead to economic development in the neighborhoods. Well, I already touched on the ADA part about the people with disabilities, so it is multifunctional. Here's a table showing the existing bike facilities and the mileage developed per year. There has been steady progress since implementing the Bike Master Plan. The graphic shows miles built annually since 2019 and the different types of facilities. So they are varied. Some are going to be the separated type of bike lanes, the bike boulevards, bike lanes, shared bus bike lanes like we have on North Avenue, the shared lane markings where you'll see like the road with a bike symbol in the roadway, and then there's other side paths.
Madam Director, could you explain to folks the difference between separated bike lane, bike boulevard?
So with a separated bike lane, you're going to see, we may have had an example up there, but literally there's like, say, like a buffer, say a 2-foot buffer or something, and it's put aside.
We have a coming up Maryland Avenue cycle track.
Okay, so we do have some images for the Maryland Avenue cycle track, which will show that. Do you want me to try to talk through it now or wait till I get a little bit later where there are some pictures?
You can just quickly run over the difference while they see the stats. So difference between separated boulevard and just bike lane.
Okay, so a lot of times what people are familiar with is, say, with a bike lane where you have the travel lane, there's a stripe lane to your right, and then there's the curb. And so that width might be 4 or 5 feet right there along the curb line. That's considered more of your bike lane. If it is a separation between the travel lane with some type of post, barrier, curb stops, typically about a 2-foot, maybe a little bit wider buffer, is off to the side, further away, then that's going to be separated. So it provides greater protection and delineation from the cars versus the bikes. Sometimes you'll also see where we'll have travel lane, parking, and then the bikes, so that they're further away along the curb lane to provide that greater level of protection. We also have situations where there's going to be something off-road, so behind the curb, where there's going to be a path, multi-use type of facility. Did I hit all of that? Okay, I think I hit on everything there. Was there anything else to add? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next slide. So this shows overall the existing bike network. This is infrastructure built since 2019, but we do have numerous projects in the works. It's color-coded, so and this can be viewed if you go onto our website. You can pull this and get this in greater view. But the different color codes, the green is, and I know it's small, but the green is the separated bike lanes, the bike boulevards, and the pinkish color, the blue, the bike lanes, the shared bus bike lanes in the orange. Yellow is where there are certain types of lane markings and signage, and then we have side paths. Going on into the planned or construction projects, these are those that are in the works, meaning there might be active planning or design going on right now, or moving ahead into the future years, and as well as the constructed. So it just breaks down. So separated bike lanes, for example, is 7.3 miles, bike boulevard almost 3 miles, side paths about 12 miles. Whereas constructed, it's 7 for the separated bike lane, 5 for the bike boulevard, 6 for the bike lanes, 4.7 for side paths, 2.9 for shared lane markings or signs, and then the shared bus bike lanes, 7.38. So here's the, speaking of the separated Maryland Avenue cycle track. So that's what's shown here, where the cycle track is along the curb lane, you have a buffer, and then you have the cars parked, and then there will be the travel lane. So here, the protected bike facilities provide safety benefits to not only bicyclists, but non-bicyclists as well. It has resulted in fewer fatal and injury crashes for both motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. The crash reductions along Maryland Avenue counter-observed increases in crashes nationwide. So what I mean is that although there were crashes throughout the nation that were increasing, because we had the complete streets elements in place here, it was able to safely control the speeds, and therefore we did not see those increases in crashes like everyone else did.
Do we have those stats?
Yes, we do. We can provide those. In addition to providing cyclists a safe place to ride, again, the facilities provide an improved safety for auto drivers and pedestrians by overall having a traffic calming effect. So here's a graph actually showing, this is the overall total crashes. So you can see there's a general trend. I know there's not a trend line there because we couldn't like break it out from the pre and post in time for the hearing, but you can see that there is an overall downward trend in the overall crashes. And this was installed in fall of 2016. Here, this depicts the pedestrian crashes on Maryland Avenue. And again, you can see the reduction in the pedestrian crashes in this corridor, thanks to the project. This one depicts the serious injuries. Again, the downward trend is very visible here. All right, so we talked about all the components to complete streets, and one major part of that is our bus and our transit. And so this is a slide here. This is directly from M.MTA's page, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but just to show you that in collaboration with MTA, they are putting in extensive transit improvements to help create access, greater access, and other transportation alternatives. This shows additional bus stops and shelters that are a part of their project, wayfinding, dedicated bus lanes, bike parking. They going in and putting additional bike parking and have the bike racks on the buses, and then the War Memorial Transit Hub. The purple lines depict ongoing MTA projects, and then the rest of the areas on the map show other projects, hubs, and things like that that are in the works. So if anyone did want more information about these projects, they could visit M.MTA's website. In general, the benefits, and again, this is not just me, this is documented from other projects throughout the nation. There are great benefits to communities where Complete Streets is implemented. The increased use of transit and micromobility results in fewer cars on the roadway. The traffic calming helps to reduce danger speeds. And even though we're focused on Complete Streets right now, I can say as an agency, probably the biggest thing that I get requests for is traffic calming. People are concerned about speeds. They're concerned about their children in the yard or walking to school and getting hit, or their vehicles getting crashed into because people are driving around the corners too fast, or homes are being crashed into. So this directly helps to reduce those speeds and increase the safety and counteract those concerns raised by the communities. So I hit on that. The lower crash risk leads to less personal property damage. Overall, the communities are safer, more livable, especially for children. When people are out moving about, walking, riding their bikes, there is more socialization and an increased activity to support small businesses. It's easier for people to be in cars and drive by and not stop. I said, you know, one day I'm gonna stop at that new restaurant, and you keep going. But if you are out there walking or riding a bike, you are more inclined to go in and visit those businesses. And then from an environmental standpoint, there's better air quality, less vehicle noise, and overall lower CO2 emissions. And so to the last slide, community engagement. So changing the way our public right-of-way is utilized after decades of largely prioritizing single occupancy vehicles has been a big endeavor. The one thing I want to acknowledge is that when the ordinance and then the manual came out, unfortunately it came out right in the midst of the pandemic. And so everything kind of got shifted, and so the engagement process wasn't really the ideal way that we would have liked to go forward. So it was very much hybrid for a long time there, and then now we've since resumed, not hybrid, virtual, and we've now since resumed having hybrid, both in-person and virtual meetings, but the community engagement needs to be stronger there overall so people understand what the program is and the goals behind it. I'm sorry, what? Updated slide includes the commitments for next year. Oh, got it. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So I have an updated slide. Okay, so yeah, we, as a part of the federal program I touched on before, there's a Safe Streets for All federal grant process. So we previously applied for a grant to do a safety action plan, and we won that one. And we've also applied for another grant to do a very robust community education, engagement, and understanding plan to help with the understanding and implementation of Complete Streets. And so we are anxiously waiting to hear about the award for that, but that will provide widespread education on the program. Over the next year, DOT will host in-person open houses to educate the public on Complete Streets, continue to engage communities on upcoming roadway reconfiguration. We have been and will continue and try to improve as much as we can to create printed materials and online graphics to share with communities citywide, and to produce public service announcements on Complete Streets. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Director.